I have the satellite images on my desk. Before and after. I printed them last week. I've looked at them every morning since. I don't know why I look at them every morning.
That's not true. I know why.
My name doesn't matter. What matters is that I was in the room.
September 14th, 2022. Operations floor. Signals intelligence. No windows. Never any windows in those rooms.
I watched a photograph get used to extract 340,000 hectares of protected forest in Adana. 340,000 hectares. The photograph was 11 years old. The deployment took 40 minutes. By 9:47 a.m. the following morning, the minister had signed Mineral Rights Concession Agreement 2022-447. 13 hours from threat to signature. Let me be precise about what happened. Not what I felt about it, not what it meant, what happened. On November 23rd, 2011, a senior official in the government of the Federal Republic of Adana attended a private meeting at a residence in Geneva, Colony district, expensive suburb, lake views. The meeting was between representatives of Adana and a neighbouring state. Adana had no official diplomatic relations with this neighbouring state. Zero. The official reason was a border dispute that had been frozen since 1987. The actual reason was more complicated and not relevant to what I'm telling you. The meeting was photographed. Our unit photographed it. Signals Intelligence Unit, not ours personally, we weren't there. Local asset. Camera. Standard surveillance. The photograph showed the official shaking hands with a counterpart from the neighbouring state. That handshake violated 3 separate international agreements that Adana was signatory to. 3. The official knew this. Everyone in that room knew this. The photograph went into a file. November 23rd, 2011. Filed, tagged, archived. That's what we do. We collect, we hold. Most of it never gets used. Most of it sits in databases waiting for a context that never arrives. This one waited 11 years. By September 2022, the official was no longer an official. He was a minister, senior minister, cabinet level, resource portfolio, forests, minerals, water rights, the whole thing. On September 1st, 2022, a company called Meridian Resources Holdings Limited was incorporated in the Cayman Islands. Corporate registry, standard shell structure, no public beneficial ownership information. 3 weeks old when we deployed the photograph. On the evening of September 14th, 2022, a representative of our service met with the minister at his official residence. I don't know who the representative was. I wasn't read in on that part. I was on the operations floor monitoring the deployment. That's the term we used, deployment.
The meeting lasted 40 minutes.
At 9:47 a.m. on September 15th, 2022, the minister signed Mineral Rights Concession Agreement 2022-47. I've read the agreement. It's public record if you know where to look. The agreement granted exclusive extraction rights over 340,000 hectares of protected forest in Adana's Northern Highlands to Meridian Resources Holdings Limited. The agreement was signed under emergency economic provisions. Those provisions allow a minister to bypass parliamentary scrutiny if there is an urgent national interest.
The minister determined there was an urgent national interest. The agreement was ratified that afternoon.
The photograph has not been seen since. In January 2023, Meridian Resources Holdings was acquired by a state-owned entity. The acquiring entity belonged to the third country, our country, the country whose intelligence service held the photograph.
340 million. That was the disclosed acquisition price. Public filing, Cayman Islands Corporate Registry.
I left the service in March 2023. I've been there 19 years. Signals intelligence. Good at the work. Very good at it. The kind of work where you understand that information is a form of capital. You collect it, you hold it, you deploy it when the return justifies the expenditure. That's not cynicism. That's the job description. I did not think about the forest when we deployed the photograph.
I thought about the operation. Clean deployment, successful outcome, file closed. We had a drinks thing that Friday. Someone brought cake. It was someone's birthday, but also we were celebrating the closure of an 11-year file. Both things.
The forest was not part of the operation. It's part of it now.
The satellite images. I took the before image from the operations archive the week I left. Personal copy. We were allowed to do that if the material wasn't classified above a certain level. Geographic survey data. I had clearance. I printed it.
I didn't know what I was printing it for.
The before image shows forest canopy, 340,000 hectares. So dense you can barely see the river. There's a river that runs through the highlands for 400 kilometers. In the before image, it's just a thin line, dark green forest and this thin blue thread.
The after image I got last week. Commercial satellite service. Anyone can access it. Subscription costs £40 a month. The river is brown. Brown for 200 kilometers downstream. Silted. The forest is gone. Red laterite soil. Logging roads in a grid pattern. Equipment yards. The roads are perfectly straight. Engineers did that. Good engineers. I look at the images every morning.
Before and after.
I tell myself I'm documenting something. I tell myself I'm bearing witness. Those are the phrases you use when you want to feel like looking at something is the same as doing something about it. Here's what I actually think about. The 40 minutes. The meeting on September 14th, evening. The representative from our service. The minister. His official residence. 40 minutes. I've tried to imagine what that meeting was like. What do you say when you show someone a photograph like that? Do you say anything, or do you just place it on the desk and wait? How long does it take a man to understand that the thing he thought was buried is now the only thing that matters? How long does it take him to understand what's being asked?
13 hours.
That's how long it took. The meeting was at 7 p.m. The agreement was signed at 9:47 a.m. 13 hours.
I wonder if he slept.
I've started writing things down. Small things I remember from the operations floor. Details that didn't seem important at the time.
There was a problem with the monitor feed that afternoon, September 14th. The screen kept flickering. Not a major thing, just annoying. One of the technicians spent 20 minutes fixing it. I remember being irritated because I couldn't see the deployment status clearly while he was working on it.
I wrote that down. I wrote down that I was irritated about a monitor while a man was being shown a photograph that would end his ability to say no to anything. I don't know what I'm supposed to do with that. The forest is being cleared in sections. You can watch it happen if you track the satellite images month by month. The logging company works north to south. Very systematic. They clear a 5-kilometer section, extract the timber, move the equipment, clear the next section.
The river gets browner every month. There were communities in that forest, 4 villages, maybe 2,000 people total. The agreement included a resettlement provision. I read it. Paragraph 17, subsection C. Compensation at market rate for dwellings and land. Resettlement to be completed within 6 months of agreement commencement. I found a news report from October 2022. Local paper. The villages were emptied shaft in 3 weeks. Compensation was paid in a lump sum. Market rate. No one disputed the rate. No one interviewed in the article said the amount was unfair. They all said the same thing. They said they thought they had time. They thought there would be consultation, environmental review, parliamentary process, all the mechanisms that are supposed to exist.
Emergency economic provisions. Urgent national interest. I spent 4 days last month doing something I shouldn't have done. I traced Meridian Resources Holdings, the ownership structure, just me, laptop, public corporate filings, the kind of thing anyone can access if they know where to look and how to read the documents. 4 days. Meridian Resources Holdings, Cayman Islands Shell, acquired January 2023 by a state-owned entity, our state-owned entity. That entity is itself a subsidiary of a sovereign wealth fund. That fund has one beneficial owner. A family trust registered in Liechtenstein.
The trust was established in 1987, the same year as the border dispute that froze diplomatic relations between Adana and its neighbour, same year. I checked that date 4 times because I didn't believe it the first 3.
I spent 19 years in signals intelligence. I used tools that cost billions of pounds. Databases that don't exist in any public record. Access that takes a decade to earn. I found what I found in 4 days with a laptop and a library card.
The photograph was not about the minister.
It was never about the minister. He was the mechanism.
Someone asked me last week why I left the service. Good job, good pension. Why walk away?
I didn't have an answer that made sense. I told them I wanted to spend more time with my family. I have 3 daughters, 16, 14, 11. The middle one asked me last month what I did at work, exactly what I did. She's studying government at school. They're doing a unit on intelligence services. She wanted to know specifics. I told her I analysed data. I told her I helped keep people safe.
She asked me if I'd ever done anything I was proud of.
I said yes. The Trust, Liechtenstein, 1987, beneficial owner.
You can find that too.
4 days, library card. I found it on day 3 actually. Day 4 I spent checking, making sure, running it through 3 different corporate registries, making absolutely certain.
The beneficial owner of the trust that owns the fund that owns the entity that acquired Meridian Resources Holdings.
The trust that was established in 1987, the same year the border dispute began.
The signatory on the trust is my wife's maiden name.
Her father was deputy director of the service from 1985 to 1994. I have the satellite images on my desk. I look at them every morning. The tree line is disappearing at a rate of 14 hectares per day.
That's the size of 12 football pitches.
Every day. The indigenous settlement that was there, 240 people, they were relocated in February. I know because I read the NGO reports. The company offered compensation, $12,000 per family, an apartment in the new township, 60 kilometres away.
60 kilometres from the river they've lived beside for 8 generations.
The settlement doesn't show up on most maps. It did on ours. I'm telling you this because someone needs to understand what happens in a room with no windows.
The photograph was deployed on a Thursday.
Deployed, that's the word we used, like it was a weapon.
There were 7 of us in the operations room. The director, 2 liaison officers, 3 analysts including myself, and a technical officer whose job was to operate the secure transmission system. The director had a blue folder. I remember that, blue folder, unmarked. She placed it on the table but didn't open it immediately.
She said, "We have 40 minutes. That's all she said at first. 40 minutes until the minister meets the ambassador. 40 minutes to decide if we provide the photograph. The photograph was already on the screen. We'd been analysing it for 6 days. High-resolution satellite imagery, a vessel, a specific vessel, territorial waters, timestamp, coordinates, everything you'd need to prove a violation. Everything you'd need to create an international incident." The director opened the folder.
She said, "The minister will be asked about enforcement."
She said, "The ambassador will request evidence." She said, "If we provide the photograph, the minister will have leverage." One of the liaison officers asked what kind of leverage.
The director looked at him for a long time.
She said, "The kind that results in acquisition." I want you to understand something. In that moment, I knew. Not all of it. Not the forest, not the settlement, not yet. But I knew we weren't talking about national security. I knew we were talking about commercial advantage. And I said nothing. The other analyst spoke, Marcus. He was younger than me, late 30s. He'd been with the service for 8 years. Smart, careful, good at finding patterns. He asked, "Is there another option?"
The director said, "We can withhold the photograph."
Marcus said, "And the minister has the meeting without leverage." The director said, "Yes." Marcus said, "And the acquisition doesn't happen."
The director closed the folder.
She said, "The acquisition is not our concern. Our concern is national interest." She said, "The minister has requested intelligence support. We assess whether the photograph serves that interest." I looked at the photograph on the screen. The vessel, the coordinates, the violation. All of it accurate, all of it verifiable, all of it true. That was the thing that made it possible. We weren't fabricating anything, we weren't lying, we were simply choosing when to tell the truth, choosing who benefits from that truth.
The technical officer asked about the transmission protocol.
The director said the photograph would be transmitted directly to the minister's secure device. No intermediary, no paper trail beyond the operations log. She said, The operations log will record that intelligence was provided in support of diplomatic engagement.
She said, "That's accurate."
She said, "That's what happened." We sat there for 11 minutes. I timed it, I don't know why. I looked at my watch when the silence started and I looked at it again when the director stood up. 11 minutes. Nobody spoke.
Then the director said, "We provide the photograph."
She looked at each of us.
She said, "Are there any objections that need to be recorded?"
This is the moment I think about. This is the moment I see when I look at the satellite images. The director asked if there were objections that need to be recorded. Not, are there objections?
But are there objections that need to be recorded?
The difference is everything. I said nothing. Marcus said nothing. The liaison officers said nothing.
The technical officer initialized the transmission system. The photograph was deployed. The meeting lasted 42 minutes.
We received a summary that evening. The minister presented evidence of a territorial violation. The ambassador expressed concern and indicated willingness to discuss remedial measures. Remedial measures. That was the phrase. 3 weeks later, Meridian Resources Holdings was acquired.
7 weeks after that, the mining permits were fast-tracked.
14 weeks after that, the forest started disappearing. I found the trust structure on day 3. I found my father-in-law's signature on day 3. And I spent day 4 making sure I wasn't wrong. I wanted to be wrong. My wife doesn't know.
Her father died in 2019. Stroke, he was 74.
At the funeral, 7 people from the service attended. The current director gave a eulogy. She talked about his dedication, his integrity, his service to the nation. I stood there listening and I thought about 1987. I thought about a trust established the same year a border dispute began. I thought about how long someone would have to plan something like that. How many people would need to be involved? How many rooms with no windows? My daughter asked me if I'd ever done anything I was proud of.
I said yes.
I was thinking about a different operation, a different year, something that actually mattered. But she doesn't know about that one. She only knows I worked in intelligence. She only knows I analysed data and helped keep people safe.
The satellite images show a wound in the earth.
That's what it looks like. Brown scar where the forest was. Mining equipment, access road, the settlement gone, the river diverted.
14 hectares per day.
I calculated it once, the rate of clearing, the size of the concession. At the current rate, the entire forest will be gone in 4 years. 47 months. I'm speaking now because I can't explain it to my daughter. I can't tell her what I did. But I can tell someone. I can say it happened. I can say I was there. I can say a photograph was deployed and a forest started disappearing and 240 people were relocated 60 kilometres from the river they've lived beside for 8 generations. I can say there was a room with no windows and 7 people and a blue folder and 11 minutes of silence. I can say I was asked if there were objections that needed to be recorded. And I said nothing.
The trust still exists.
The beneficial owner is listed as a private foundation. The foundation's board has 3 members. I don't recognise 2 of the names. The third is currently serving as an economic liaison officer.
She was in the room.
She was one of the 2 liaison officers who said nothing. I left the service in 2023
Because I couldn't stop seeing the satellite images.
I left because my daughter asked me what I did and I couldn't find a way to tell the truth. I left because 40 minutes in a room with no windows resulted in a wound in the earth that grows by 14 hectares every single day. And because when I was asked if I objected, I understood exactly what was being asked. I understood that objections could be raised. They just couldn't be recorded.
The forest is being cleared. You can verify that.
Library card. Satellite imagery services, academic databases, NGO reports. You can see the wound. You can see what 40 minutes created. I have 3 daughters, 16, 14, 11. The youngest doesn't ask about my work yet, but she will.
And I still won't know what to say.